So my name is Dominique Seid, and I'm one of the senior teachers in Rigpa. And you might be wondering why we have invited so many of you here tonight, not only from the region, but from across the world, to join us for this public talk. And I think the answer to that question lies really in Samdhong Rinpoche himself. We've had the great privilege to host him for the last week here. He's been giving a 6-day course on the essence of Buddhist philosophy to over 600 people here in the Shrine Room. And as I'm sure you will see for yourselves very soon, he is a quite exceptional and remarkable person. He served 2 terms as the first democratically elected Prime Minister of the Tibetan government in exile. And he continues to be a close associate of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and often serves as his representative. Some of you may remember in 2006, when the Dalai Lama was due to visit Lerabling, he had to cancel his visit at the last moment and actually sent Samdhong Rinpoche then as his representative here. So this is his 2nd visit to Lerabling. Samdhong Rinpoche plays a prominent role in supporting the ethical and compassionate vision of His Holiness the Dalai Lama across the world. He was born in Tibet, and he was recognized according to Tibetan tradition as an incarnation of the 4th Samdhong Rinpoche. And he began his studies in Drepung Monastery in Tibet before he had to flee in exile in 1959 when he went to India. And he continued his studies in India. And in fact, he told us the other day that it was at that point that he was asked to learn English as a foreign language. And he told us that he was the sort of group leader of a little band of people who objected to learning English as a foreign language. I thought that some French people here might feel quite sympathetic towards his position. Anyway, once the Dalai Lama actually asked him to fulfill quite a number of high responsibilities, he realized that English is quite a useful language to learn. So he now speaks fluent English and fluent Hindi, as well as Tibetan. So His Holiness Dalai Lama invited Samdhong Rinpoche to work in various capacities, particularly in Tibetan cultural and educational institutions. And he was appointed director of the Central Institute for Higher Tibetan Studies, where he played an enormous part in educating several generations of Tibetan scholars. He's widely recognized as an eminent and distinguished scholar, teacher, and philosopher. And in recognition of this, he was appointed president of the Association of Indian Universities. And in addition, and this is one of the reasons we invited some of you tonight, he is an authority on the teachings of Krishnamurti and of Mahatma Gandhi. And his stand on nonviolence and on other important humanitarian issues of our time is exemplary and an inspiration for us all. A number of his talks have been collected together in a book which has just been published called Uncompromising Truth for a Compromised World, Tibetan Buddhism and Today's World. And tonight, as Sam mentioned, he will be speaking on what Buddhism has to offer the modern world.
The venerable monks and nuns and respected sisters and brothers, my humble greetings and good evening to you all. In the beginning, at the outset, I would like to acknowledge and welcome the leaders and members of the local political, religious, and community organizations who are with us here. And apart from that, all our local friends who have come tonight for this talk. The audience who is also following the talk via video, I welcome you all. I was asked to talk on the subject or topic, what Buddhism has to offer the modern world. It is a kind of unfamiliar topic for me. So at the beginning, I must apologize that I do not have any prepared presentation or speech. We might discuss what Buddhism has to offer to the modern world, but I do not have anything to offer to you, which is worthwhile to be considered as offering. The Tibetan Buddhist monks are more habitual of accepting offerings and not offering to others. That's why the communist Chinese leaders accused the Tibetan Buddhist people, Buddhist lamas and monks, as yellow robbers and red thieves. That's referring to Rinpoches and the monks. They are considered to be exploiters of the community or the society. That was communist view. However, I think there's some important matter if we look into this topic more seriously. What Buddhism has to offer the modern world. So first we have to discuss what is Buddhism. And then we have to discuss what is the world or modern world. And only thereafter we might be able to find out whether anything has to offer or nothing is to offer. Buddhism, many people understood as one of the religious traditions, no more, no less. That concept, that understanding might not comprehending exactly what is Buddhism. Buddhism is not exactly a religion in the strict terms, in strict connotation of the term. In India, there's an expression, some of the scholars used to say that the Islamic is a holy religion, the Hinduism is a way of life. Buddhism is a science and philosophy. So there might be some difference between the various traditions. I definitely do not say that Buddhism is superior to any other religious tradition. I am only saying that there are differences, there are similarities, and there are also dissimilarities. So without noticing the dissimilarities, we will not be able to understand all religious traditions as equal. Then you may not be able to understand the greatness of each one of the religious traditions. Each one of the religious traditions are so great, so holy. So we shall have to respect every religion equally. Therefore, the Mahatma Gandhi interprets his concept of secularism as Sarva Dharma Sambhava. Sarva Dharma Sambhava means absolutely equal respect to every religion, no distinction between any religion. That is the real secularism in his view. Of course, the other Indian people translated the English word secularism as Dharma Nirpechta. That's something very horrible. It says we are not concerned to any religion. Nirpech means just ignore, nor taking note of. So that is not the meaning of secularism. Of course, the secularism can be interpreted in many ways. Negation of religion, against religion, or not abiding by the religious tenets well in the process of lawmaking. So there are different ways of interpreting it. But what Gandhi said is the most appropriate thing, to have respect, equal respect to every religion, not distinction. But a person shall have to practice one religion, one's own religion, and try to stick to it throughout life. Unless there is a very reasonable cause or convincing logical cause, the change of religion is not a good thing for a respectable human being. In spite of no difference between the different religious traditions, yet there is a suitability to human individuals. That's why His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama always says the numerous different traditions of religions is a necessity to different humanity. One religious tradition is not enough to entirety of the humanity. That's true. For example, to sustain our physical body, we need food, drink, and cloth. But there cannot be one kind of food and one kind of drink and one kind of cloth if you make the entire 7 billion people asked to wear just one kind of cloth and just one kind of food. Absolutely impossible. It will not make the people happy. It will not make people comfortable. Each individual has a different kind of test. Not only test, suitability to his or her body, and therefore so many different kind of preparations and foods are necessary. But it does not mean certain group of food is more superior than the other food, or certain group of drink is more superior than the other drinks. All of them are good for those persons who are suiting to that. So similarly, religion, philosophy, and any kind of knowledge that is very much necessary for the diverse aptitude, diverse level of liking and disliking, and intelligence and capability of understanding. So there need to be so many different things. So in this context, Buddhism has so many dissimilarities with the other religious traditions. So those dissimilarities need to be recognized and find out whether these things are relevant or beneficial to present day's humanity, or for that matter, entire sentient being, including the earth, the environment, and everything. Buddhism deals with three things in the process of communicating the Dharma. First, it deals with the base. Second, it deals with the path. And third, it talks about the ultimate goal or the result. The path belongs to only Dharma. And dealing with the base, the ground, it is a searching of the nature of phenomenon and the nature of mind. The inquiry, the analyzation to find out what is the exact nature, how the mind and how the phenomenon do exist, and how the mind and phenomenon has a relationship. These things are either belonging to a philosophy or the science. The Buddhist science do not have any external laboratory or tools to make experiments. The entire Buddhist science makes this experiment within the laboratory of the mind through analyzation, visualization, or concentration. It tries to improve the mind in order to experiment on the matter or on the phenomenon in a more better way, instead of developing the external tools or instruments. So the mind is trained in concentrative stability meditation, analytical sharp meditation, and enlargement of the intelligence and power of understanding, and by that it tries to find out the reality of the mind and matter or mind phenomenon. They do the search quite similarly, the search the modern scientists do. That's why there is a possibility of engagement and dialogue between the Buddhist people and the modern science people. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama gave a great importance to engagement between these two. Although I personally do not participate in this process, but I know the importance and the progress. For the last more than 30 years, more than 25 conferences or dialogues have been taking place in various parts of the world, and a number of different very celebrated scientists has taken part, and they do appreciate that there is a possibility of engagement, and through which more insights can be built up and beneficial to both, from Dharma to from Buddhist science to modern science, from modern science to Buddhist studies. That's why His Holiness encouraged all the Buddhist monastic institutions in India to introduce introductory course in various modern sciences, so that the Dharma people may not be absolutely ignorant of the basic principles of the modern science. So there's a lot of interaction and lot of dialogue. So Buddhism shall have to be seen as a subject which includes the inquiry into the nature of entire phenomenon and also the mind, both mind and matter, through which the reality of the existing can be discovered, revealed, and understood. Thereby, the perception and the cognition can be improved and enlarged. Then also, Buddhism do have references or discussions or principles on the matters of social, economic, and politics. These are the basis of development of modern world, the contemporary world. Buddhist in-depthly deals with the right livelihood. And on that basis, the Bhutanese has come out in a theory, on a principle, instead of national gross income production, they talk about national gross happiness. And this principle is completely drawn out of the Buddhist principles of socio-economic development theory. Sometimes it's funny. A few months back, I met a researcher at Hyderabad, and she was quite unhappy, and with anxiety, she come to us and discuss. So I asked her, what is the matter? She says, it is very difficult to find out a yardstick to measure the happiness. So what is necessary to measure the happiness? Happiness is happiness. She says, no, I'm working on the principle of national gross happiness, and there must be, when we theorizing it, there must be certain yardstick and certain cross-cutting principles through which the gross amount of happiness can be measured and put into categories or statistics. So we laughed. So happiness is very difficult to be maintained and to be achieved if you do not have the basic, basic technique. Anything can become a cause of unhappiness, as we discussed the other day. So, similarly, the Buddha's teaching has a lot of things about the political systems, particularly the principles of democracy, equality, and all these things. 2,500 years ago, Buddha set up his Bhikkhu Sangha and Bhikkhuni Sangha, complete in the system of equality and democracy. There was no singular authority. Each one of the member of Sangha is equal when something decision-making process or rule-making process is carried out as a Sangha karma. This Sangha system is one of the basic models for a parliamentary system in India. Of course, India do have a parliamentary system and republics during the time of Buddha as well. The first principles of democracy was coming from India, and therefore, even the 2,500 years ago, there was a number of republics in India, particularly the Vaishali, that was the biggest republic. And Buddha have make all the Vinaya rules on the basis of democracy. So that's why there are a number of researches and books on the social philosophy of Buddhism or political philosophy of Buddhism on the basis of the Buddha's teachings. So, therefore, Buddhism is a vast subject, and it has reference to almost every aspect of human life, human individual life, as well as the concerns of the society. So we shall have to take Buddhism as a source of social science, a source of political system, and also a source of material science and philosophy. So if we look to entire these aspects, then we will be able to whether there's something can be taken by the contemporary world from the Buddhism or there's nothing. So first, the necessity is to understand what is Buddhism. Then coming to the modern world, the first day when I was told your public talk is on the what Buddhism has to offer to the modern world, I asked the organizers, due to my ignorance, what is modern, what is modernity? Are we still in the modernity or post-modernity? Because there are so many different definitions and interpretations of modernity, and modernization. So they very kindly give me from the sources what is modern, but at this moment we are not going to discuss them. We shall take the modern world means world of today, the present contemporary world. The contemporary world need to look closely and what is the situation of the contemporary world. We always think that after modernization, the nations, they are emancipated, they are liberated, and they come to a very great time, and there's no problem. This is a general concept, or this should be general concept, otherwise why we talk about modernity. His Holiness tells us, once he was invited by the late Queen Mother in the UK. At that time she was around 100 years old, but she was very active and alert. And His Holiness asked her, you lived for a century, and can you tell me the old days during your young age was better, or the today, the world today is better? And she very enthusiastically tells His Holiness, oh, it is much better today. And when I was a child and I was a teenager, there was not much of equality between the gender differences, the male and female, and there's not much democracy, no talk about human rights, and a lot of domination and injustice. Now we are in a period, democracy, human right, gender equality, and freedom of individual, all these are available. So the things are much better. So in a way, she is right, because these days we talk a great deal about this. We talk a great deal of equality, democracy, human rights, freedom, liberty, and so many things, very good words. But in reality, do we have all this? There are a lot of contradiction in our life, not only in individual's life, the life as whole, human society, and the life of nations. For example, we take the issue of democracy. What are the principles of democracy? If we look to the highest or the biggest organization, the so-called UNO, United Nations Organization, which had around 200 member nations, I think 198 or 197. Around 200 member nations, all the decisions are taken by one nation. And we accept it as a democracy. So if this is a democracy, then what is wrong with the kings and the queens and the emperors? If one nation or one person is able to take a decision on behalf of the entirety, the membership. In the nations level, Gandhi had remarked the parliamentary democratic system very severely in his Hindu Swaraj. I met a political science professor from Taiwan, Formosa. And at that time, Formosa was newly democratized, and multi-party democratic system was set up, and the presidential elections were concluded. I just congratulated him